Oftentimes, I see outrage over movies, comics, TV shows, or games because of its supposed woke politics. As someone who enjoys all four of those mediums, wokeness tends to pop up as a subject in conversation, especially when comparing what came before to what we have now. I've covered a variety of examples as to where people have argued this in public spaces. Whether this is done as a grift, out of ignorance, or a mix of both, the point would still stand that the word woke has lost its meaning because of how quick people are to throw this as a condemnation, while oftentimes failing to substantiate what that means. Now, if I'm going to approach this in good faith, let's at least try to understand what these people mean when they say things are woke. This isn't to validate or invalidate these applications of the term, but rather to get an impartial understanding of intent. Now, the original intention behind the word is actually defined as more of a positive trait, interestingly enough. Under this definition, woke means aware of and actively attentive to important societal facts and issues, especially issues of racial and social injustice. Under this definition, it's difficult to argue why wokeness is bad as a concept. To address societal issues, that requires awareness. So I don't imagine this is what people mean when they say it's bad when things are woke. Let's take a look at another definition, often used in contexts that suggests someone's expressed beliefs about such matters are not backed with genuine concern or action. This gets closer to what someone may consider a problem, as this addresses the idea of lacking sincerity or speaking without productive action. But to put the criticism I'm responding to in better faith, let's take a look at another negative usage of the term. Politically liberal or progressive, as in matters of racial and social injustice, especially in a way that is considered unreasonable or extreme. This is what I imagine to be the primary definition of wokeness that anti-woke content creators are operating under. The idea that the way issues are addressed are done through extreme or unreasonable means. And to be fair, this can be an issue if you prove that said means are unreasonable or extreme. The problem is that 99% of the time, at least in my experience, people fail to substantiate this to a logical degree. And that leads to people using woke as a buzzword to spark outrage and controversy, even if the basis of what they're complaining about doesn't make any sense, and if the core of their criticism is invalid. The anti-woke content creators that I respond to fail to make logical arguments for why the media they're talking about is too extreme or unreasonable in its ideas, such as when Marvel's Spider-Man 2 was criticized for one of Kraven's hunters besting another in combat, on the basis that the winner is female and that the loser is male, to imply that the game has an agenda against males. Most of us can tell why this criticism is illogical, and ironically, takes an extreme position. Women are capable of being skilled fighters, and skill is of major importance when you're fighting someone, which is why the game makes a point of how Kraven's lack of power is made up for by his planning and strategy. This is even true for Spider-Man, as a common trope is that Peter Parker or Miles Morales are able to find creative solutions to defeat supervillains, especially when they can't contend with the raw power. But in spite of the logical reason given for why the scene played out the way that it did, someone found a way to take offense and use this to farm outrage. Or when the Batman was criticized because it featured too many good black people and too many bad white people, as if it had some kind of anti-white agenda, even though the main character in the movie, the only one who has any business being called a superhero, is a white man, who was mentored by a white man. The mere presence of racial diversity amongst the morally stronger characters was enough to be seen as an attack, which goes to show that those accusing the Batman of presenting extreme ideas are simply projecting. And of course, there are examples where people simply point to things or play count the minorities to say there's an issue, like pointing to a rainbow flag, annotating how many minorities are on screen, or claiming that a gay couple is inappropriate for children. These are examples of where people try to assert that an agenda is being shoved down our throats. It's strange because none of this energy from these same people is applied to when an American flag is depicted, when a cast mostly consists of white males, or when a straight couple is depicted on screen, because doing so wouldn't cause the same outrage, or at least their desired outrage. The criticism is often justified by saying it comes from an escapism perspective, that they want their media to be an escape from what's happening in the real world. The reason that criticism is shallow is because it's not inherently bad storytelling to reference or borrow elements from the real world. Sometimes that becomes a necessity for stories that explore specific elements in history, or want to depict a realistic setting, or at least a setting with a degree of realism. This form of criticism advocates for an unrealistic standard for media in general. Stories often take elements from reality and incorporate them into its universe, which I've demonstrated through the many examples I've listed earlier that don't receive the same backlash from them. So if if referencing elements from the real world creates an issue, the reason shouldn't be rooted in wanting to escape from what's in the real world. The issue should come down to how it's done. The problem is that a lot of people don't talk about execution, they talk about the mere existence of references to the real world. And with the shallow reasoning given to justify these types of criticisms, I could use the exact same standard and make any piece of media look bad. I mean, I proved this back in April 2025, where I made the Spectacular Spider-Man look like a bad show by doing exactly what these people do. I pointed out all of the race swaps to make it seem like the creators hate these characters. I fixated on race where it wasn't relevant to force a narrative that it's anti-white. I fixated on gender where it wasn't relevant to force a narrative that it's anti-men. You see the parallels here, right? It wasn't hard to come up with these ideas for the April Fool's parody. All I needed to do was to take statements that I've heard from these people in the past, then alter them into criticisms of the show. At first, I didn't think it'd be that easy to replicate their rhetoric, but it's that easy, because these aren't very nuanced or well thought out perspectives. They're incredibly simplistic because they're incredibly shallow. And I don't say that to be an asshole, I say that to make an objective observation. And when this is the summation of anti-woke media discourse, the title of my video becomes self-explanatory. People are throwing the term woke like the boy who cried wolf. So when I hear that a piece of media isn't worthwhile because it's woke, I'm inclined not to take it seriously whatsoever. I've heard it so many times about great pieces of media, and the criticisms didn't make any sense. This is even true for when the pieces of media are bad, so why should I believe it now? They repeat this condemnation towards media, and their reasoning is blatantly illogical or shallow. If you don't believe me, take a look at my playlist of response videos where I regularly respond to this type of rhetoric. Take a look at High CHD, Anthony Gramiglia, The Birdman, The Gaming Rift, League Entertainment, even The Amazing Lucas, and so much more who have covered these anti-woke channels and pointed out the blatant nonsense and hypocrisy within their content. There's an overwhelming amount of evidence that the things that they say don't hold up to scrutiny. And honestly, why stop there? I think there should be more people talking about this and how it's a genuine plague to media discourse. Get people to wake up and see that they're being fed bad material to spark misplaced outrage, and stop taking this form of criticism seriously. That's not to say you should abandon media criticism altogether, because being critical of what's being released does matter. However, that should also extend to the rhetoric you follow. If the rhetoric you're listening to doesn't make any sense and falls apart when others are scrutinizing it, then maybe it's time to rethink the validity of said rhetoric. And if you think I'm mistaken on this, I'm happy to listen. I'm open to debating anyone on the anti-woke side who thinks I'm misrepresenting or misunderstanding them. I'm gonna start running Disagreement Day streams more often, so anyone who has a disagreement can hop on and explain why. If your viewpoint holds up, then you should be able to defend it from scrutiny, and despite my disagreements, I think anyone who disagrees with me should have the chance to try. With that said, there's not much else for me to discuss. I wanted to get a general video out there that touches on the anti-woke discourse in a broader stroke, and give a detailed overview of what's wrong with this form of criticism. And I think my channel has a collection of evidence for you to check out if you want to see me dismantle specific takes where this form of criticism is applied. That's all I've got for now. Let me know what you think in the comments. Subscribe if you want more of these videos, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye.